Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome back to the spring campaign for Arkham Horror, the card game. Last week we managed to help a student activist poison Hitler in the Chancellery in Berlin while playing Black Orchestra, but we have no time to celebrate. After the campaign intro went up last week, we're ready to tap into Daisy's connections at Miskatonic University to start the spring campaign with our first scenario, Extracurricular Activity. Without any further ado, let's jump into the intro for this scenario.
Scenario 1A, Extracurricular Activity. Intro. Dr. Armitage is worried his colleague, Professor Warren Rice, might be in trouble, so he's asked for your help in finding his friend. He seems unreasonably nervous about his colleague's disappearance, considering Professor Rice has only been missing for a matter of hours. Scenario...
Yep. Okay, so now that we've got that taken care of, for thematic purposes, Daisy will be our lead investigator. So let's start with her as we look at our ladies' opening hands. First up, we actually have a pretty good combo together. Where first up we have the Laboratory Assistant, which increases your maximum hand size by 2. And after she enters play, draw 2 cards. 1 health and 2, 2 sanity on Soak. Sorry for the little cough there. And that'll combo with the Forbidden Tome. Untranslated, it's a wild card on commit. The Research Librarian had a lore on commit, which I forgot to mention. And it's a 2 cost to play. The Forbidden Tome, untranslated, is a 1 cost to play with a lore or with a wild card on commit. Uses 5 secrets, and it is a tome, so Daisy's free action could be used on this. As an action, exhaust Forbidden Tome and spend 1 secret. Draw 1 card. Then, if you have 10 or more cards in your hand and there are no secrets on Forbidden Tome, you may discard it to record in your campaign log that you have translated the tome and it's got a hand slot on it. Next up is a copy of Encyclopedia. Uses 5 secrets. As an action, 2 cost to play, wild card and commit as well. As an action, exhaust Encyclopedia and spend 1 secret. Choose an investigator at your location. That investigator gets +2 to a skill of your choice until the end of the phase. Then we have our old favorite, Deduction, as a skill lore on commit. If this skill test is successful while investigating a location, discover 1 additional clue at that location. And finally, Daisy's Tote Bag, 2 costs to play, will, lore, and a wild card on commit. Daisy Walker deck only. You have 2 additional hand slots which can only be used to hold tome assets. So we can definitely get a lot of tomes out and get her moving on that in a hurry. As for Stella's opening hand, we start off with a copy of Mysterious Raven. As a reaction, we can discard Mysterious Raven and take 1 horror to discover 1 clue at your location. Then we have Scrapper, 2 costs to play, combat, and agility on commit. You can spend 1 resource to get 1 of either stat for the skill test. We have Take Heart, which you can commit 1 per skill test and commit to any type of test. If this test fails, the performing investigator draws 2 cards and gains 2 resources. And then we have 2 copies of Look What I Found. As a fast, play after you fail a skill test by 2 or less while investigating. Discover 2 clues at your location. So we've got 2 copies of that. Then we'll start working our way over to the map, but first we're going to go through our act and agenda. So we'll take a look at Agenda 1A first. Quiet halls, and we need 7 doom to advance this. You have arrived at the Miskatonic University campus in search of Professor Warren Rice. Classes are over, and a mysterious silence hangs in the air over the quad. Wait. I gotta double check something, because the setup is different for these first 2 scenarios depending on which one you do first. Okay, never mind. Okay, never mind. Minor crisis averted. It does affect something with setup, but I'm not going to get into spoilers on what that something is. Anyway, Act 1A. After hours. Professor Rice was last seen several hours ago by one of Armitage's students in the Humanities building, and we need 3 per or 6 clues to advance. And then just as a reminder of what our tarot reading was for this scenario, we left the Sun 19 on the good side. During each investigator's first turn, they may take 2 additional actions. And then we flipped Justice 11 to its bad side. So the final agenda of the game enters play with 1 doom on it. Okay, I think that's everything we can do over here. So now let's head over to our starting map and see what we're working with. Here's our starting map. We've got the Miskatonic University laid out here. So we've got the Orne Library, Humanities Building, Student Union, Administration Building, Science Building, and our investigator's starting location, I believe? Yes, each investigator begins play at the Miskatonic Quad, so we'll take a look at this. Alright, Miskatonic Quad. A too early winter has stripped the trees bare. Their dead branches whistle as a sharp, cold wind cuts across the empty quad. And then this flips over. Shroud of 3, no clues. As an action, we can't resign. We can't find Rice anywhere. You leave the campus hoping Armitage will forgive you. Surrounded by fences and gates of wrought iron, you can't help but feel as much a prisoner here as a guest. Right. So we definitely want to get things moving here. But anyway, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the scenario now that everything's all set up. Daisy's our first player, so we'll start down at her play area. It would also help immensely if I remember to give Daisy her 5 resources. Anyway, I'm going to see if I can flip this, get this Forbidden Tome active as fast as I can. So action 1, I'm going to pay 1 resource to play out said Forbidden Tome. So once again, that'll need 5 secrets. We can, as an action, we can exhaust it and spend a secret to draw a card. Then when we have 10 cards in hand, 10 or more cards in hand and no secrets on it, we can discard it. I'll flip that over now that we've got a tome out. I'll discard it and record in the campaign log that I've translated the tome. Then as the tome action, I will go ahead and spend the secret and exhaust it to draw a card. So Daisy will draw. Drawn to the flame, draw the top card of the encounter deck, then discover 2 clues at your location. Okay, so that was her tome action, which means Daisy has 4 actions left. So for action 2, I'll go ahead and play out the lab assistant. So now her maximum hand size is 10, and I get to draw 2 cards when it enters play. So Daisy will find, first up, Dream Diary, which as an 2 cost to play, lore on commit. As an action, I can search my bonded cards for Essence of the Dream and add it to my hand. And then after I succeed by 3 or more during a skill test where I commit Essence of the Dream, I record in my campaign log that I've interpreted the dreams. And that's a hand slot. And Arcane Enlightenment. My maximum hand size increased by 1, and I have an additional hand slot which I can only use to hold a tome asset. Okay, so that was action 2. I think action 3 will take us over to the map. We'll take Daisy over to the Orne Library for action 3. We'll take a quick look at the Orne Library. 3 floors of weathered gray granite, the library looks more like a reliquary than a place of learning. Stone gargoyles snarl down from above arched windows, and Latin script winds across the double doors at the top of a wide set of stone steps. This flips over to find Shroud of 3, 2 clues. You must spend 1 additional action to investigate the Orne Library. The Orne Library is a labyrinth of dusty bookshelves and poorly lit halls. but it's got victory 1. So we'll get the 2 clues out for that. Let's see, that was actual action 3. Action 4, we'll actually go ahead and grab those clues out without an action to play Drawn to the Flame. So Daisy will draw from the encounter deck. Terror from Beyond, oh joy. Choose one of the following card types. It's a peril. Asset, event, or skill. Each player must discard each card in his or her hand that is of the chosen type. If this is not the first copy of Terror from Beyond drawn this phase, choose 2 card types instead. Ah, boy, I think almost everything hurts me, so I'm going to choose... I think the least bad choice here is I'm going to choose Skill. So that'll discard Daisy's Terror from Beyond. Or Daisy's Terror from Beyond. Daisy's Deduction, and Stella's Take Heart. I think everything else would have hurt even worse. But we do get the 2 clues off of there without having to take an action. And then action 5, I'll bring Daisy down to the Humanities building. So we'll take a look at this. Professor Rice was last seen in the Humanities building, teaching one of his Latin classes. The murky windows of this weather-worn structure emit no light, and the night is silent around you. And we find... Shroud of 4 clues. Forced, at the end of your turn, if you're in the Humanities building, discard the top X cards of your deck, where X is the amount of horror on you. And flavor text on here. The power is out, plunging the building's halls into heavy darkness. There is no sign of Professor Rice. So we'll get the 4 clues for that. Okay. And then Daisy is stuck in the Orne Library at this Humanities building. Fortunately, she's got no horror on her, so she doesn't have to discard any cards. Then Stella will actually stay over here with Stella. So for action 1, she's going to move to the Humanities building. Action 2, she's going to investigate down 1. Actually, and I got to remember that we've got 5 actions at the start of this round. So we are investigating down 1. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. That needs to come out. That's a token I might need later. Anyway, as I was saying, down 1. -2 is down 3, so she fails, but she does get her special action this round. Action 1 is to move down, action 2 was to investigate, and that's how we got that. I'll use her special action now to investigate again down 1. Skull can't be anything good. Skull is -1. If you fail, discard the top 3 cards of your deck. So we do fail. So I'll discard the top 3 cards of Stella's deck. And I'm not going to go through any of these, but looks like we've got a Mysterious Raven, a Scrapper, and a Grit Your Teeth. I'm not going through them because they're not relevant. What is relevant, however, is the fact that Stella failed by 2, which lets me play Look What I Found, and Stella gets 2 clues at her location. Then this is real action 3, we'll run that back down 1. Elder Sign is +1. You may instead choose to automatically fail this skill test to heal 1 damage and 1 horror. Well, Well, she does pass, so I'm actually not real happy about that, but there's nothing I can do about that now. So Stella will pass. Then action 3, I can leave that last clue for Daisy. Action 3, action 4, I should say, I'll move her up to the Miskatonic Quad. Then action 5, I'll move to the Student Union. Even at this late hour, you can hear a muffled chatter from inside the Student Union. Perhaps one of the students will know where Professor Rice is. Then we find shroud of 1, 2 clues. Forced, after Student Union is revealed, put the set-aside dormitories into play. 2 actions to heal, 1 damage, and 1 horror. So we'll get 2 clues out for the Student Union. And then we'll find the dormitories in the set-aside pile. Here we are. The door leading into the dormitories is locked. You cannot move into the dormitories. The red brick form of the west dormitory could be seen through the trees. Graham McNeil, Ghouls of the Miskatonic. So we'll get a connecting arrow for that as well. And then that will do it for Stella's last action. Enemy phase, there are no enemies in play, although we did actually draw an encounter card from Daisy's Drawn to the Flame. But anyway, that will do it for the enemy phase. So now let's move back up top. So we'll ready, actually, before we do that, we'll ready everything over here. Now we'll move back up top for the Upkeep phase. We're back up top for the Upkeep phase. Daisy gets 1 resource and goes up to 3. Stella also gets 1 resource and goes up to 4. 4. There we go. Daisy will draw. Dr. Milan Christopher. 4 cost to play, lore on commit. You get +1 lore, and after you successfully investigate, gain a resource. So that brings Daisy up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards in hand. So we've got a little ways to go on that. And then Stella will draw. Granny Orn, tough old bird. You get +1 will. And when an investigator at your location would fail a skill test, exhaust Granny Orn. That investigator fails by either 1 less or 1 more. Okay, so right, Mythos phase. So we get our first doom up on the agenda. There's our first doom. Daisy will draw. Pushed into the beyond. Choose a non-story asset you control and discard the top 3. Choose and shuffle a non-story asset you control into your deck and discard the top 3 cards of your deck. If a copy of that asset is discarded, take 2 horror. I think I'm going to shuffle the laboratory assistant back in. Especially now that I can probably get Milan out. I might need to take a resource to do that, but that's still not an all that terrible idea. Okay, so we'll cut that. And then we'll discard the top 3 cards of my deck, and we find the lab assistant, so Daisy will take 2 horror from that. And then Stella will draw a thrall. Spawn 2/2/2, spawn at the location with the most clues so it will make friends with Stella and retaliate. A malevolence has overtaken their minds, turning them into soulless puppets, 1-1 on attack. So, joy, joy. That does make friends with Stella. But anyway, that will do it for the Mythos phase. I think our first investigator this round will be Stella, and her goal will be to get away from that thrall, so let's start in her play area. Action 1 for Stella is going to be to try to evade the thrall. She's up 2, and I don't really have any agility that I want to commit to this. So up 2. Skull, as we saw earlier, is -1. If you fail, discard the top 3 cards of your deck, except Stella does not fail. Action 2 will be to investigate. She's up 1. -1 gets her a clue. And then action... Actually, we're going to go ahead and advance the Act deck, because I might end up wanting to get moving. So we'll spend all 6 of these clues. That may change what I end up wanting to do. Alright. The head janitor. You were unable to find Professor Rice, but one of the students you spoke with mentioned a strange man entering Rice's office. Unfortunately, the door leading to the facility's faculty offices is locked at this late hour. The student says that the head janitor, Jazz, might be able to let you in if you can find him. Shuffle the encounter discard pile and set aside Jazz Mulligan into the encounter deck. So we'll take a quick look at Jazz Mulligan before we shuffle him into the encounter deck, because it might be a while before we see him again. But anyway. Alright, so Jazz Mulligan, the head janitor. 0 cost to play, but he won't be in anybody's hand most likely. Revelation to put Jazz Mulligan into play at your location. While Jazz Mulligan is not controlled by an investigator, he gains action parlay, test lore 3. If you succeed, take control of Jazz Mulligan. While you control Jazz Mulligan, you ignore the text on each unrevealed Miskatonic location. 2 health, 2 sanity on soak. Okay, so we'll go ahead and shuffle the encounter deck back up. We'll give it one more quick shuffle. And a cut. And then action 3 for Stella. I can probably spend one more turn there with the thrall. And probably still successfully be able to evade it. So I'll go ahead and investigate up 1, especially as well. I'll show you why I'm going to do that after we go through Act 2A. Rice's whereabouts. Concerned for Professor Rice's safety, you seek out the head janitor who can let you into the locked sections of the campus. As an action, spend 1 clue, discard the top 5 cards of the encounter deck, 10 instead if there is 1 player in the game. Forced, if you discard Jazz Mulligan for any reason, resolve his revelation effect. Objective, when you take control of Jazz Mulligan, advance. So now I'm going to... Actually, I could just play the Raven and grab that clue for a horror, but... That might actually be the better plan while I'm... Well, it's a Shroud of 1, so I think I'll be fine up 1. +1 gets me the clue. So I'm basically assuming that Stella can give that thrall the slip and start working our way through the... through the encounter deck to find Jazz. But anyway, that will do it for Stella. Now let's move over to Daisy and we'll jump down to her play area. As much as I want to try to play Milan this turn, I also don't want to stay in the Humanities building when it's going to be making me discard the top 2 cards of my deck every turn. So for action 1, Daisy will investigate up 2. -2 gets her the clue, so that'll be very helpful. And action 2 will take us over to the map. Daisy's down here at the Humanities building. Action 2 will move her up to Miskatonic Quad. Action 3, I'll go ahead and toss the clue to go through the top 5 of the encounter deck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's see what we find here. No jazz yet, but we do get rid of some very dangerous cards. So I won't worry about that too much. Speaking of cards, we'll use Daisy's free tome action to draw a card from her Forbidden Tome. So Daisy will draw a Eureka. Will, lore, and agility on commit. If the skill test is successful, the investigator performing this test searches the top 3 cards of his or her deck for a card, draws it, and shuffles his or her deck. Alright, that brings Daisy up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards in her hand. But anyway, that will do it for Daisy's turn in the Investigator Phase. Enemy Phase, the only enemy is our Thrall, who has been evaded. So we'll go ahead and ready everything up here. The Thrall will come back to Stella. And then we'll move back up top for the Upkeep Phase. Daisy will gain a resource, go to 4. Stella will gain 1 and go to 5. Daisy will draw Hawkeye Folding Camera. 2 costs to play. Lore on commit. Reaction: after the last clue is discovered from your location, place 1 resource from the token pool on this card as evidence. Limit once per game at each location. While Hawkeye Folding Camera has 1 or more evidence, you get +1 lore. 2 or more evidence, you get 1 will. 2 or more evidence gets you +1 lore. 3 or more evidence gets you +1 sanity. Daisy has 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 cards in her hand, so I will need to keep an eye on that right now. Stella will draw Rabbit's Foot. 1 cost to play, wildcard on commit. Reaction: after you fail a skill test, exhaust Rabbit's Foot, draw 1 card. And we'll go through the flavor text on that when we actually draw it, or when we actually play it. So in the Mythos Phase, agenda goes up to 2 doom. Daisy draws Ancient Evils. Revelation: place 1 doom on the current agenda. This effect can cause the current agenda to advance. Dark forces stir against you. If you do not act quickly, a sinister plot will be fulfilled. Ah, good old Ancient Evils. And then Stella draws Terror from Beyond. Oh joy. Peril. Choose Revelation. We saw this earlier with Daisy, and it's the first copy that we've drawn, so I will discard. And I can't make a choice that... Actually... I'm going to choose... Unfortunately, as painful as this is going to be, I'm going to choose Events, which will discard Stella's Look What I Found. Daisy hopefully won't be hurt too much by discarding Events. No, she won't be, actually. She won't be hit at all by it. So anyway, that will do it for the Mythos Phase. Now we're into the Investigator Phase. Once again, our first player will be Stella, with a mostly the same turn that she had as last round. Stella's first action is going to look really familiar. We're going to try to evade the Thrall up 2. A very well-loved +1 gets us away from the thrall. Action 2 will spend her clue to go 5 into the encounter deck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we find... Hey, look at that. We found Jazz in the quad. Or not the quad, the student union. So we'll put him into play there. We do get rid of some very dangerous stuff, though. Then for action 3, I kind of wouldn't have minded having the lore from those two Look What I Found now, actually, but c'est la vie. Anyway. Action 3, I think, will be to try the parlay. Remember, that's a lore 3. Daisy could do that in her sleep if she had to, and she might have to come down to do that. So I'm going to commit the Mysterious Raven to get Stella to even. And try this parlay. +1 actually gets her control of Jazz, so Stella will bring Jazz into her play area down here, and that will advance the act. The experiment is loose. You convince Jazz that something strange is going on and that Professor Rice may be in danger. He doesn't trust you enough to hand you his keys, but agrees to come with you. All of a sudden, you hear a crash from the science building, and a student rushes toward you. "Help!" he cries. "There's some kind of animal loose in the chem labs. I only barely caught a glimpse of it, but..." He shudders. "I think it's heading to the dorms. You've got to do something. If the alchemy lab's location is not in play, put it into play. If you are at Agenda 1 or 2, spawn the set-aside experiment in the alchemy labs. And I won't worry about the part about if you've completed the house always wins, because we have not yet." So, though the part I will mention, as we wait for this to come back into focus. If extracurricular activity is the first scenario of the campaign, remove the set-aside alchemical concoction from the game instead. So we get the alchemy labs. There we go. The experiment, and that goes, and the alchemical concoction goes away. All right, so that doesn't come out. We get the alchemy labs in play. And we'll take a look at the experiment. Something went terribly wrong. 472. It is massive. Gets +3 per investigator health. Forced. When the enemy phase begins, ready the experiment. An objective. If the experiment is defeated, advance to Act 3B. Victory 2, 2 damage, 2 sanity on soak. Yeah, this team is not defeating that in a million years. So, anyway, that will do it for Stella, however, because we did find Jazz. So, Daisy's turn will take us over to the map. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of metagaming once I find where I put my laser pointer. I know I put it down here somewhere. A pen. Mostly because I wanted to point out where I had to put the alchemy labs. Ah, here it is. So the alchemy labs is all the way up here by the science building. And the experiment is way up here. So I'm pretty sure the science building is not somewhere I want to be. So for action 1, I'm going to bring Daisy down to the administration building. Around the aged administration building, creepers of ivy climb from the ground in an effort to claim it. The old hall stands alone in an isolated section of the campus, apart from the day-to-day bustle of students. And this will flip into Shroud of 4, 2 clues. Forced. If the administration building is revealed, put the set-aside faculty offices into play. And then also forced at the end of your turn, if you're in the administration building, discard the top card of your deck. So we'll get the 2 clues for that. Mostly right now I'm trying to fish out victory points, but I don't think I'm going to find any. So that was action 1. Action 2. So now I think my focus is going to mostly be on getting out of this scenario as fast as I can. Action 2, I'm going to bring Daisy to the Miskatonic quad. Action 3, I'll have her join Stella. And then for her free tome action, we'll use the Forbidden Tome once again to draw a card. So Daisy will draw. Shortcut. 0 cost to play, lore agility on uncommit. Fast to play only during your turn. Choose an investigator at your location. Move that investigator to a connecting location. Okay, let me check her hand size. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so that will do it for Daisy in the Investigator phase. The Enemy phase, the experiment doesn't move because it's not a hunter and the thrall has been disengaged. So that will do it for the Enemy phase. We'll start readying everything over here. The thrall comes back to Stella. Go ahead and flip all of these over. And then we'll move back up top for the Upkeep phase. Actually, before we move back up top for the Upkeep phase, I almost forgot to put the faculty offices into play. The night is still young. The Alchemy Labs had similar text that the door leading into the facility's faculty offices is blank. You can't move into the faculty offices. You come to a locked door at the center of the stairs leading to the 3rd floor of the administration building. Through its frosted window, you glimpse a shadow darting across the hall. So we'll put that into play there. Then we'll take a look at the flavor text very quickly for the Alchemy Labs. A pungent stench runs from the laboratory downstairs. The silence of the hall is broken by the unmistakable hiss of a burner. And once again, the door leading into the Alchemy Labs is locked. You can't move into the Alchemy Labs. Anyway, now that we've got everything straight, now we'll move back up top to the Upkeep phase. We're back up top to the Upkeep phase. Daisy will gain 1 resource, go to 5. Stella will gain 1 and go to 6. Daisy will draw. Medical tests. As an action, I can choose 2 cost to play, combat, and commit. As an action, I can choose an investigator at your location and test lore 2. If you succeed, heal 1 damage from that investigator. If you fail, deal 1 damage to that investigator. And I think I have to discard right now, don't I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9. Yep. Medical text looks like discard fodder to me. And then Stella draws. Will to survive. 4 cost to play, combat and agility on commit. Fast to play only during your turn. Don't reveal chaos tokens for the next skill test you perform this turn. Okay. Might be something I can use. But Mythos phase, Doom goes up to 4. Daisy will draw. Visions of Futures Past. On Revelation, test Will 5. For each point you fail by, discard the top card of your deck. Well, Daisy's based down 2 right now, so I think we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do we try to pass this? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to need at least 1 more turn, 1 more round before the Forbidden Tome can go off for me, so I might as well. I think I'll commit Arcane Enlightenment to get to even, and then Eureka to go up 1. So that'll bring me down to 6 cards in hand. So up 1. Skull, as we saw, it was -1. If you fail, discard the top 3 cards of your deck, except we didn't fail. So we get a card back from Eureka. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3. So first card Daisy gets to look at is a Shriveling. Uses 3 cost to play, will combat on commit. Uses 4 charges. As an action, spend 1 charge to fight. This attack uses will instead of combat and deals +1 damage. And if you pull a bad symbol, take 1 horror. Next possible choice is a Scroll of Prophecies. Oop. 3 cost to play, uses 4 secrets. Does not want to focus for me here. As an action, I can spend a secret, choose an investigator location. That investigator draws 3 cards and then discards 1 from hand. And another Arcane Enlightenment, which we just had to use. So I think I'm going to take the Scroll of Prophecies here. It is another tome, so I will be able to use its tome action if I need to. So I'll go ahead and shuffle those back in. Wow, we're going through Daisy's deck very quickly. But I suppose when you get basically a free extra draw every turn, that's very helpful. Alright, so that's all done for Daisy. Stella draws a Whippoorwill. Fantastic. Aloof Hunter, 2/1/4. Each investigator at Whippoorwill's location gets -1 to everything. It is vowed that the birds are psychopomps lying in wait for the souls of the dying. H.P. Lovecraft, the Dunwich Horror, does 1 horror on attack. Fortunately, that's aloof, though, so that's not going to make friends with either of the ladies yet. But anyway, that will do it for the Mythos phase. We're into the action phase now, and I think we're going to start with Daisy, and we're going to start at the map. Okay, so we're starting at the map, because since it is Daisy's turn, we're going to use a fast action. We're going to use a shortcut to bump Stella down to the dormitories. So Stella will move down to the dormitories, then we'll see what is lurking over here. We find... first of all, we had the door... she gets to ignore that because of jazz, but we'll look at the flavor text. The red brick form of the west dormitory could be seen through the trees. Graham McNeil, Ghouls of the Miskatonic. Then we find Shroud of 1, 6 clues. If investigators in the dormitories spend 3 per clues as a group, go to R2. As you explore these old, well-kept buildings, you find yourself wondering whether the beds are comfortable. So that will need 6 clues for that, which I'll grab that now. So it looks like we do have an objective we can use to get out of this scenario. But anyway, that was a fast action at the start of Daisy's turn. So let's move back down to Daisy's play area. I'm mostly going to use Daisy right now to hold the Whippoorwill in place. So for action 1, Daisy's going to spend 3 resources to play out her Scroll of Prophecies. Mostly I'm going to try to have her see if I can activate the... yeah. Okay, the flavor text in here. So it was, and so shall it ever be. There's an argument to be made for playing the Dream Diary first, but... see, 3, 4. And Daisy, as her tome action, will actually draw a card from her deck. Daisy will draw that Shriveling that we weren't sure about anyway. Let's see, 1, 2, okay, 5, 6. Action 2. I think I'm going to take a resource And then for her last action, I'm going to play Shriveling. So we'll get the charges for that as well. Actually, I think what we need are... I'm just going to use these anyway. Because they're the first thing I know they're not really... Actually, I want that over in one of the arcane slots. I know they're more like physical charges than mystical ones, but I'm already using these as secrets. The question mark icons are probably what I actually want for the secrets, but anyway. My plan with Daisy is working very well. I can probably spare one more turn before I send Daisy down to the dormitories and help her rip through those clues. But anyway, that will do it for Daisy. Now let's move over to Stella. Action 1 for Stella. You guessed it. Evade the Thrall up 2. Another well-loved -2 evades the Thrall. Then actions 2 and 3 will probably be... Action 2 will be to investigate. We're up 1. And I've got no lore I can commit to this, so up 1. Skull is -1, but we don't fail because we were up 1. And action 3 will be to investigate again, up 1. -2 fails, so we do actually get the extra action, which will be another investigate. -1 gets her another clue. So that's fantastic. Then that will do it for the investigation phase. Enemy phase, our only enemies are the Whippoorwill, who is currently holding in place on top of Daisy, and the Thrall, who Stella has evaded. So I'll start readying everything. Bring the Thrall back to Stella. And then we'll move back up top for the Upkeep phase. Daisy gains 1 resource and comes back to having resources. Stella gains 1, goes up to 7. Daisy draws. Chronophobia, oh joy. Revelation, put it into play in your threat area. Forced at the end of your turn, take 1 direct horror. 2 actions to discard Chronophobia. And then Stella draws. Neither rain nor snow. 3 question marks on commit. If the skill test fails, cancel all effects of the failed test. Okay, we might need that a little bit later, but I'm getting ahead of myself there. Mythos phase. Doom on the agenda goes up to 5. Daisy draws. Arcane Barrier. Attached to your location. As an additional cost to move into or out of attached location, test Will 4. If you succeed, discard Arcane Barrier. Otherwise, you must either cancel the move or discard the top 5 cards of your deck. Oh, fun. Stella draws. Terror from Beyond. Peril. Oh, great. Actually, this probably won't affect Daisy too much, but we've seen this before. So, Stella's hand. I think we're going to discard events. Yes, we're going to discard events. So that gets rid of Stella's will to survive. And then Daisy, for events, Daisy still doesn't lose anything. So, okay. Right. Well, I think we can actually pull this off finally. What I've been setting up for a while for. So let's start in Daisy. Let's go down to Daisy and start in her play area. This time I'm going to use Daisy's Tome action first on Scroll of Prophecies, which will let me draw 3 cards and then discard 1 from my hand. So first up I find St. Hubert's Key, which gives me +1 lore, +1 will, and -2 sanity. Then when I'd be defeated by horror, I discard it to immediately heal 2 horror. Second up, Read the Signs, where I get will and lore on commit for a 2 cost. I investigate plus will, and I can ignore any effect or keyword on my location which would trigger during the investigation. If I succeed, I discover 1 additional clue at my location. And another Read the Signs. So let me just make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I think I'm going to have to activate that again. But I will discard Milan because I'm not going to need him now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. I'll activate that again. And yes, I am going to be taking 1 horror at the end of my turn, but that's fine. Okay, let's see what I find here. First up, Eureka, which I might want to keep. Then Occult Lexicon, which is also an option to play. And Rite of Seeking. So I'll actually discard the Rite of Seeking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. As a as my second action, I'll actually use the last charge of the Forbidden Tome to draw a card. So I will draw Arcane Enlightenment, which actually means my hand size 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have 10 cards in my hand, so I do get to discard the Forbidden Tome, which will let me record that I've translated the tome. Just doing that off camera. Translated the tome. And then for action 3, I will... What will I do for action 3? I will just take a resource. Anyway, that will do it for Daisy. She will also have to take a horror, though, from Chronophobia. That will do it for Daisy, so now let's move over to Stella. Action 1 for Stella. You guessed it, kids. Evade the Thrall up 2. -1 gets us away from the Thrall. Action 2 will be to Action 2 will be to investigate up 1. Up 1, I should say. A 0 gets her a clue. And then action 3 will be to run that back. Get her another clue. That will work very nicely. And then that will do it for Stella in the investigation phase. Enemy phase, once again, no enemies in play. Daisy, no relevant enemies in play. Daisy's doing a phenomenal job holding that whippoorwill in place. So anyway, we'll go ahead and reset everything. Thrall comes back to Stella, and then we'll flip that back over, and then we'll move back up top for the Upkeep phase. Daisy gains a resource, goes up to 3. Stella gains a resource, goes up to 8. Daisy draws. Celiano Fragments. While I have 5 or more cards in hand, I get +1 lore. 10 gives me +1 will. 15 gives me +1 lore. But I will have to discard at least 4 cards, probably. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Shockingly, I only have to discard 3. It'll be Arcane Enlightenment, Encyclopedia, and Hawkeye Folding Camera. And then Stella will draw an 18 Derringer. Where's this been all scenario? 3 cost to play, combat on commit, uses 2 ammo. As an action, we can spend an ammo to fight, get +2 combat, and deal +1 damage for this attack. If you fail, place an ammo on 18 Derringer. Anyway, Mythos Phase. Doom goes up to 6 on the agenda. Daisy draws. Eager for Death. Test Will 2. Increase this test's difficulty by 1 for each damage on you. If you fail, take 2 horror. Okay, so I'm at... Oh, and then let's look at the flavor text here. If they can catch the fleeing soul when it leaves the body, they instantly flutter away, chittering in demonic laughter. H.P. Lovecraft, The Dunwich Horror. Okay, so Daisy right now is up 1. I'll commit Eureka to bring her up 2. And we'll use a Read the Signs to bring her up 3. Tentacle Touched. Fantastic. So Daisy takes another 2 horror, which means we might actually need to... We either need to get rid of Chronophobia or end the scenario soon. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself there. Stella draws a Whippoorwill of her own. Fantastic. Okay, so... So the goal now is probably going to be to try to close the scenario out as fast as we can. So I think with that in mind, I'm going to go to... what closes this scenario out the fastest? That is a good question. Actually, I think we go to... I can either discard the top... I can either do that or discard the top 5. Okay. Well, I think I've got a little bit of a plan here. So we'll go to Daisy, and her turn will start us at the map. Okay, I'm going to move... action 1 for Daisy, I'm going to attempt to move, but I've got to test this arcane barrier, and I fully expect, and kind of don't mind failing right now, actually. A +1 doesn't even get me up to failing because of the Whippoorwill, so I do still fail. And I'm going to discard the top 5 cards of my deck, 3, 4, 5, because I'm hoping the scenario won't last much longer, and we see... Wow, how do I still have the Necronomicon in my deck? That's part of why I was okay with the fail there, because I figured I was statistically likely to discard it. So anyway, that was action 1. Action 2, I'm going to pay 2 resources to play Read the Signs. So once again, I'm investigating Will plus Lore, but I can only commit Lore to this test. So I'm -1 everything because there's still a Whippoorwill here. So 2, 4, 6. 6 to 1, I'm up 5. Does Stella have anything she wants to commit? No, so I'm up 5. And I did account for the Whippoorwill. I would have been up 7 without the Whippoorwill, so I'm up 5. A 0 gets me those last 2 clues. And then we will spend the 6 clues, because Stella had 4 from keeping the thrall at bay. So we have 6 clues, because it's 3 per as a group, so 6 clues, which will bring us back up top for R2. Okay, we're back up top, so let's take a look at Resolution 2.
Resolution 2. You pull each of the dormitory's fire alarms and usher the students out of the building's north exit, hoping to make your way off campus. Many of the students are confused and exhausted, but you believe an attempt to explain the situation will do more harm than good. Minutes later, a terrible screech echoes across the campus, piercing and shrill. You tell the students to wait and head back to the dormitories to investigate. Oddly, you find no trace of the strange creature, a prospect that worries you more than it relieves you. You hurry to the faculty offices to find Professor Rice, but there is no sign of him anywhere. In your campaign log, record that Professor Warren Rice was kidnapped. In your campaign log, record that the students were rescued. Each investigator earns experience equal to the Victory X value of each card in the Victory display. If this is the first scenario of the campaign, proceed to Scenario 1B, the house always wins. Otherwise, proceed to Interlude 1, Armitage's Fate.
Okay, so we ended up with 1, 2... That's it? Yeah, well, I've got to remember, too, Dunwich is actually... Oh, we forgot to advance this. Oh, no, never mind. Find incomplete. Okay, never mind. So, yeah. I do have to remember, though, that Dunwich is actually... very stingy with experience. So I only get 2 experience, which is rather unfortunate because of the 2 locations that I was able to clear out, but there was no help for it. Right? Yes, 2 experience. Right, I did forget Dunwich was that stingy, but anyway. That will do it for this playthrough of Extracurricular Activity. Later this week, we'll do upgrades along with a tarot reading for next Sunday's scenario. And then next Sunday, we'll see how out of place a mail carrier and a librarian look at La Bella Luna as we venture into the second scenario, The House Always Wins. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.